What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brad and you're watching Firewood at the Furnace. If you checked out Friday's video for the first Friday's bonus video that came out, then you know that we bucked up all this wood that's stacked up here behind me. There's oak, there's cherry, there's a little bit of ash, and a bunch of locust. So today we're going to start splitting on this. Of course, we're in front of the Eastonmade 1222. And in today's video, what I want to do is kind of elaborate a little bit on the 7-way box wedge that I run. You know, that's my favorite thing to run. It's pretty much exclusive what runs in this 1222. And some people have talked about the box wedge before, and I've touched on it before. But I want to go into a little bit of detail about the way I run it, some things that I've learned from running it, and some things that you can do to help yourself run it a little more efficiently. So we're going to cover all that today. We're going to fill up the trailer and see how much of this pile we can get knocked out, so stick around. So as always, there's a nice fresh coat of grease that I put on the beam before I run it every single time. Always take care of the machines that take care of you. But what I want to touch on here is the way that the height that I run the box wedge. And if you notice right here, this piece is stationary in the machine. This part that protrudes up through the box wedge, and you see down here below the wedge. When you pull this box wedge out, that stays put. The 4-way, if I were to put the 4-way, or if I had a 6-way, that would drop in right here in front of that permanent piece that sticks up there. Now, so the way I gauge the size splits that I like is by lifting this wedge up and pretty much running it flush with the top of this or slightly below it. The wedge is sitting all the way down now. I'm going to run the wedge in its lowest position. I'm going to run it in the position that I like to run it, and then I'll raise it up and split some bigger pieces for those of you who like to split, you know, boiler wood or like your firewood to be a little bit larger in size, and show you the differences in the size pieces that you can get through this wedge. So I just wanted to explain that to you there real quick before I start the machines up. Once we get to splitting, I'm going to show you something else that you can do to help yourself when you're running this machine, or any machine for that matter, whether you're running a box wedge, a 4-way, a 6-way, whatever. It applies to everything that you do when you're splitting wood, especially in several directions. And that has to do with the push plate and the way you push the wood through the wedge. So I'll get to that here in just a minute. Let me get the machines fired up and we'll get started. Alright, so what we'll do to start is we'll split this entire round with the box wedge at its lowest position. Once we get to the center of the round, I'll pull out a couple pieces, we'll set them aside, and then when we raise the wedge up, I'll set them up so you can see comparison, the smallest to about the largest that you'd want to run. So the next one that we'll run is about where I normally run the wedge. I'll put another round on here, we'll split that, and I'll put a piece aside. All right, and now I'm gonna raise the wedge up a little more, and we'll run some big pieces. I'm gonna raise the wedge up to where the bottom of the 7-way, the bottom of the cutting edges are even with the beam of the splitter. I just ran a smaller piece through there real quick so that I can lower the wedge back down to where I like it. Then I'll shut the machine off and we'll talk about it. All right, so I hope you all could hear me okay over the machine, and I hope I wasn't yelling at you too loud. But we've got 3 different sizes that we split here, and we're going to talk about each one of them, and then you guys can decide for yourself which way you like to run. But we ran it at the lowest position in the beginning, and I'll just go ahead and tell you right now that in between the box wedge there's about 4.5 inches, 4.5 to 5 inches roughly, between each of the wedges on that 7-way. So obviously that's going to be our measurement most of the time. But these 2 smaller pieces is about 3.5 by 2.5 is that one. And then this piece here is about 4 by 2.5 to 2 3/4. So this is running the machine at its lowest position. Pretty much, I mean, that's almost good campfire bundle size wood there. They do make the 7-way pizza wedge. That's a little bit narrower, so you can get a little bit smaller pieces out of it, but that's pretty good size wood there. So we'll set those aside and move on to the way I like to run the machine when I'm processing heating wood, and that is, like I explained to you, when the wedge is flush with the top of that stationary part of the splitter. So here we've got about 5.5 by 3.5 on that piece, and about 5.5 by 4.5 on this piece. So here's what I like to run for heating wood, just to give you an idea of that. And then we raise the splitter up even higher to where the bottom of the blades were even with the bottom of the beam. And here we've got 6.5 by 5, and here we've got about 6 by 4 3/4. So here's a little bit bigger pieces, and if I can hold them all, I will put them all in my arm so that we can compare. And you can see the differences as we move the wedge very little. I mean, you saw I'm only raising the wedge up just very little bit at a time, but that's the difference that it makes in the size of your splits. So I hope that helps you out with a couple questions. The next thing we're going to talk about is a variable that's entirely dependent on you and the way you run your saw. So let's get to that right now. So like I said, this next thing that I'm going to talk about pretty much is dependent on you, and none of us are perfect. Sometimes we get in a hurry, sometimes we sharpen our saws wrong, sometimes if we're cutting with a log that's on an angle, we don't pay attention as much as we should, and what happens is we end up with cuts that look like this. Now if you can't see what the problem is there, I'm talking about how it is not cut straight and even with the push plate. When you get your cut off on a little bit of an angle and you try to push it through a wedge, that's where you'll encounter the problems. And the more ways you're trying to split the wood and push it through a multiple way wedge, I think the more problems you're going to create. What happens is when you start to push that wedge, or you push that push plate and you push that wood through that wedge, it's going to try to alter the path of your round. So right now what's going to happen is when it gets through the push plate, it's going to try to lift the log up like this. And to be honest with you, if you have a round that's cut this way, that's probably the best way to push it through, because it's going to push away from itself. Now what happens is, if the round is 180 degrees around, let me flip it around, I'll show you that. If you have your round in here like this, what's going to happen is it's going to try to lift the back of the round, and it's going to want to drive it down into your table of your splitter. And as it drives it down into the table, not only is it going to be applying pressure to your table that you don't want to do, but it's going to be skipping across the round and creating what I call like a feathering effect in your wood. So when I encounter this, I either try to flip the round around to the other side to where the push plate is pushing flush, or I will have it the way we originally showed it, 180 degrees opposite of what it's sitting right now, so that the wood will push itself up and away from the wedge rather than down and into the table. So that's just a couple things I wanted to talk to you about and show you that I've learned. This might be information that everybody already knows, but if it helps one person, then it's worth me doing this. So now we're gonna get the machines fired back up and really get to work and get this trailer filled. There we go, trailer's loaded. So now the next step is to unhook from this trailer. We'll hook up the other trailer and back it down in here, because we've got to load 1 cord of heating wood for a delivery tomorrow. Knocked a pretty good dent in the pile of rounds we had stacked up there. So we're ready to start cutting some more. Get stocked up again for the next splitting session. But that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to unhook the trailer that we just loaded and get the empty trailer over here and chuck some wood. All right, we got the trailer back down in here in the yard, and I solicited a little bit of help. Brady's over there chucking wood, and my nephew Trip is over there chucking wood. I offered them to make a few dollars here today. And it's good to do a little bit of work and sweat a little bit to put an honest dollar in your pocket. So I'm gonna help them chuck it. I'm not gonna stand here and watch them do it and be a supervisor, but I just wanna let you know what was going on before I jump over here, speed you up, get this trailer loaded. We're chucking cherry right now. We're gonna chuck some oak and probably, I don't know, some maple or some more oak. I'll let you know when we get there. But this 1/3 of a cord is all cherry going in right now, so here we go. All right, that is 1 cord of firewood loaded in the trailer. There's some cherry, there's some oak, there's some ash, and there's some maple. So good mix in there, and Brady and Tripp helped me out. That's probably the quickest they've ever made 20 bucks in their life. 20 bucks each for what? 15 minutes worth of work? That's more than $1 a minute. But you do a little bit of work, you get rewarded for it. Put some money in your pocket and buy something you like. That's gonna be it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you check out the video every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. A new one comes out. Like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel if you would please. We certainly appreciate it. And until next time, I hope you all have a great week.